Well, good evening. My name is Nicholas Wiggins. I'm Chief Operating Officer at Values Partnerships, and it's so good to see all of you on tonight's call. Tonight, in partnership with Left Collective and PBS, we're bringing together everyone for a meaningful and timely virtual town hall to spotlight Dr. Henry Louis Gates' newest four-part docuseries, Black and Jewish America, an Interwoven History, a project that explores one of the most significant and complex relations in our nation's history. Through shared struggles against racism and anti-Semitism, historic moments of solidarity and tension, and transformative collaborations in culture and public life, this series traces a history that continues to shape America today. Featuring conversations with leading scholars, civic leaders, and cultural influencers, we're in for a treat. The documentary reveals how Black and Jewish communities have challenged, supported, and inspired one another across generations. Tonight, you'll hear from Dr. Gates and several contributors who helped to bring this series to life as we celebrate its national premiere tonight at 9 p.m. Eastern. Thank you again for joining us in this important conversation. And before we get started this evening, I'd like to welcome an Austin, Texas native, a Morehouse man, a visionary leader, Reverend Dr. Kevin Johnson, the senior pastor of the Abyssinian Baptist Church, the first African-American Baptist church in the state of New York, to open us up in prayer during a time when we all seem to need it a little more. Dr. Johnson?
Thank you so much, and good evening, everyone. This is an important conversation, and I thank Dr. Gates as well as we value partners for tonight. Let us pray. Gracious God, we come to you this evening. We gather tonight with grateful hearts, mindful of our histories of Black and Jewish Americans, that we are bound together by struggle, by resilience, and an unshakable commitment to justice. We remember Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and his brother in the struggle, Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel, marching arm in arm in Selma, their shared conviction that injustice anywhere is a threat to justice anywhere. We honor the courage of Black and Jewish freedom riders who risked their lives together, like James Chaney and Andrew Goodman. They were martyrs in this beloved community. Lord, we come tonight for this sacred opportunity to connect, to remember that "let my people go" are words that resonate both with Black and Jewish communities. Yes, tonight we acknowledge the troubling times. Racism rises, anti-Semitism spreads, sexism persists, hatred seeks to divide us when you want to bring us together. So tonight, in the face of fascism, bigotry, and division that threaten our democracy itself, we come together for a conversation, for a dialogue, for an opportunity to start anew. Bless now this conversation, this dialogue, this series on Black and Jewish Americans together. It's in your name that we pray. Let everyone who believes say amen.
Amen. Thank you so much for that prayer, Dr. Johnson, for setting the atmosphere for tonight's conversation.
Thank you.
We're excited to enter our first discussion tonight, which features Reverend Rosalind Brock and Rabbi David Saperstein. I've had the pleasure of serving with both of them as a member of the NACB Board of Directors. Reverend Rosalind Brock is a nationally recognized health policy and equity advocate, a social justice change agent, noted public speaker, and youth leadership mentor. She holds the distinct honor of being the youngest person and fourth woman unanimously elected in 2010 to the position of National Board Chair of the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, the NAACP. She served with distinction for 7 years and currently holds the title of Chairman Emeritus. And Rabbi David Saperstein is the Director Emeritus of the Religious Action Center of Reform Judaism, having served as its director and counsel for 40 years. Designated by Newsweek magazine as the most influential rabbi in America, he is the first rabbi in American history to have been designated a U.S. ambassador during the second term of the Obama administration. Rabbi Saperstein served as the United States Ambassador at Large for International Religious Freedom, carrying out his responsibilities as the country's chief diplomat on religious freedom issues. And our moderator for this evening is a good friend and colleague from the Values Partnerships team, our Senior Vice President and Head of Social Impact, Kelsey Wharton. How are you, Kelsey?
I'm doing well, Nicholas. How are you? How
Wonderful.
are you tonight? It's always good seeing you. So, Nicholas, thank you so much. We are excited to dive into the conversation this evening. But before we get started, let's take a look at the official trailer for the docuseries.
When I was growing up, I only thought of race in terms of black and white. It wasn't until much later, when I learned about anti-Semitism, that I realized blacks and Jews face common enemies. But when we stand together, we are a formidable force.
The relationship between African Americans and Jews in the United States, it's not a simple story, and it cannot be a simple story.
It's got a really long history.
When these two communities get together and they synergize creatively or politically, they're a juggernaut and they can't be stopped.
Jewish people have always been some of the first outside of the culture itself to embrace black music.
A white Jewish producer and the greatest black jazz singer of all time. Why can't the world be like this?
Rabbi Heschel told him I not live because they're killing folk in Selma.
I think the civil rights movement healed our souls after Nazi Germany.
There was a very visible Black-Jewish alliance during the civil rights movement.
That relationship accomplished incredible things.
But I don't want to romanticize the alliance because it wasn't an untroubled relationship.
We want black power.
There is a profound sense of the Jews are the haves, the blacks are the have-nots.
Nothing has separated the Jewish and the black community more than this issue of affirmative action.
It's dangerous to make it all the same. We're not the same. We come from different histories.
I don't consider myself white. And when I once told our class that, they laughed in my face. You laughed in my face.
I did.
Blacks and Jews in the Crown Heights section of Brooklyn clashed, inflamed by the death of a young boy.
The old alliance between blacks and Jews, is that in jeopardy now?
Very much so.
We must not allow the relationship between Jews and African Americans to suffer.
The whole purpose of this meal is to let you know we are Jews too.
In Charlottesville, violent protests broke out at what was supposed to be a white nationalist rally.
When you see Charlottesville, you see that most people that are anti-Semites are also racist.
When everything blew up on campus, I wasn't sure about how I would navigate the conversation.
We have to find a way to listen to all the rancor, even when it makes us uncomfortable.
It's dangerous because it's a really hard time to talk about either black people or Jewish people. It's just become fraught in so many ways. But anything that's dangerous is worthwhile.
That was such a compelling look into this new and upcoming docuseries that's releasing tonight. So there's a lot for us to talk about tonight. So let's go ahead and hop right into conversation with Reverend Rosalind Brock and Rabbi Saperstein. How are you both doing tonight? It's great to see you.
Pleased to be here, truly.
Good evening.
Good evening. Good evening. So Reverend Brock, let's just jump right in. The NAACP and the Jewish community were very powerful partners during the golden age of the civil rights movement. As someone who has stewarded that legacy herself, what are some spaces where that relationship is fractured? And how do you think today's generation of civic and civil rights leaders can reimagine that partnership to meet the challenges of rising hate, polarization, and misinformation?
Well, let me just start by saying thank you for the opportunity to have this very important town hall conversation and dialogue. And what a pleasure it is for me to join my former board chairman with me, Rabbi Saperstein. David Saperstein is here. It's always great to be with him. It's been one of my greatest honors to serve in leadership in the NAACP since I was a college student in the early 80s. And I've seen up close the real closeness and relationship between the NAACP and the Jewish American community. It's not new. And a lot of folks don't realize that many of our founders and our early funders were from the Jewish community. Names like you may remember Arthur Spingarn or Joel Osteen, who we give the NAACP's highest honor to, or Julius Rosenwald, and our NAACP Life Membership Chairman was Kivy Kaplan. He was known worldwide for his membership drives. Our attorney was Jack Greenberg and many others. Heather Booth, I have to remember the women as well. Heather Booth has served with our voting fund. And currently on our board, we're so pleased that Rabbi Jonah Pesner, Randy Weingartner, Frida Kapor, Alan Lutowski, they all currently serve on our national board of directors. And there's so many more. You always get in trouble when you try to say names, but I've got to say thank you to those who serve with us in leadership. So when we talk about the golden age of the civil rights movement in the context of Black-Jewish relationships, I think what we're really talking about is a partnership that was rooted in shared moral courage, where individuals were willing to kind of really put their reputations, their resources, and their very lives on the line for what they believed was right. But now, if we're truly honest, in most recent years, in the wake of rising hate, misinformation, and polarization, that relationship is not as close as it has been in the past. And I don't say that to point fingers or to cast blame, but I do believe that you can't heal what we won't name. And so where places where those fractions happen, I believe, is in the sense of proximity. For in the 50s and the 60s, our leaders were in each other's spaces. We joined together in our churches and our synagogues and meeting places and at strategy tables. But now, today, months could go by before we get together and have a press release or a press conference. And I believe that coalitions similar to our own personal relationships don't just survive on history and memory, but they survive on habit and moments. And those are the types of things that we need to look for as we're trying to bring that relationship back together, because there's so much disinformation that's happening in our community today that's promulgated through our social media platforms, that we need to do more listening and less labeling and asking more questions instead of making assumptions.
Reverend Brock, that is a powerful statement. What I'm hearing is the importance of building that muscle, that shared muscle across both communities, which I think is a really profound way to put it. Thank you, Reverend Brock. Rabbi Saperstein, so the series doesn't shy away from naming the tensions between our communities, as Reverend Brock was just mentioning. A massive tension is, of course, the crisis in Israel and Gaza, the loss of life, the pain, as well as the suffering in communities there. As a leader who spent decades at the intersection of both faith and public policy, what do you see as some of the most important steps faith leaders and congregations can take today to build bridges and rebuild trust in order to strengthen genuine solidarity?
This achievement that Dr. Gates has made happen here in this documentary is something really remarkable. I've worked for 50 years in this field, and I've advised on a number of documentaries. This is something extraordinary. The nuance, the insight, the balance and fairness of the messages, taking these complex challenges we have. This is an extraordinary achievement. And part of that deals with the war in Gaza. Here, it is always difficult when you face survival narratives that are in tension with each other. Most Jews believing that Israel literally is in a fight for its existence. That Hamas made it clear they would repeat what they did on October 7th, and together with powerful allies, Hezbollah, the most powerful non-state actor on earth, Iran, the Shia militias in Syria, the Houthis, it literally was a fight for survival, and Israel's strength, enhanced by American support, stands in the way of their succeeding. How can there be any question that Palestinians have a fight for survival going on? The occupation has for decades and decades deprived them of the ability to achieve their national goals. Their leadership has often been counterproductive to the achievement of those very goals. Israel may have had a just cause to begin the military response targeting Hamas, but just war requires just means as well. And I think there are many in the Jewish community as well as in the world community who believe that Israel did not have failed to meet that test. This left scars in our tensions as more and more African Americans began to embrace the need for Palestinian national liberation in the face of the continued occupation and the destruction of the war in Gaza. And what happened in terms of the coalitions? Some ended coalitions with pain and anger between the parties. Others went into hiatus and said, let's take a breather from working with each other. But the vast majority of the interfaith coalitions, the Jewish-Muslim coalitions, and the Black Jewish coalitions, the civil rights coalitions, said, look, we're not going to agree on this. But this isn't part of our core agenda here as we are fighting for against hunger. We're fighting for better education. We're fighting for the homeless. We're fighting for immigration rights. We have all these fights going on. We're going to stay together on the things that that hold us together. That continued the whole time. Actually, over all the decades, times there were tension on many levels, local to national. People were working together. So if you look at Congress today, the Black Caucus and the Jewish Caucus have continued to work together. There's some notable exceptions of a few of their members, but they work together day in and day out. Here in the civil rights community in Washington, you think of the Leadership Conference on Civil Rights, the umbrella group, which in part was started in the conference room where I am sitting right now at our Religious Action Center, where for 30 years they were in our building, and all of the meetings drafting civil rights coalitions happened at this table and continued for decades. That continues with the Leadership Conference, with so many of the coalitions, and the NAACP has continued its cooperative work with us and other Jewish organizations here. So ironically, it is the Trump administration's agenda that has kind of revitalized some of these, even while the tensions remain, revitalized our working together because we realized we didn't have a choice. The rise and empowerment of the right here has been significant. It threatens us all. The attack of the administration on core principles of the rule of law and due process in America, the attack on immigrants, the mobilization of quasi-military forces moving into our city, all of that has brought us together, revitalization again. At the local levels, these continue, and I think increasingly they will continue at the national level as we continue to fight for the rights of African Americans, the protection of Jews, and the fight to counter anti-Semitism, the fight against hate in general, and to ensure that American civil liberties and civil rights remain secure, voting rights in particular. Every state is getting together again, rejuvenating those coalitions.
And Rabbi Saperstein, that is really helpful, close to that response, in that you're speaking about the importance of community mobilization, building understanding, but also finding very actionable ways to jump in and get engaged. So I'd love to take it back to Reverend Brock, and thank you, Rabbi Saperstein. Reverend Brock, so one of the goals of this town hall is to spark engagement across churches, synagogues, HBCUs, sororities, fraternities, as well as civic groups. From your experience mobilizing diverse coalitions, what message from the series do you believe will resonate most, will get people moving and taking action? And how can leaders in this virtual room activate their networks to truly build understanding and solidarity that's being discussed across both responses?
First of all, I want to say that it is an excellent documentary, and I encourage everyone to go after our town hall meeting and watch it. But if you're looking for a blueprint, we don't have to invent one. We can learn from the women of the civil rights movement, because they understood something that we sometimes forget, that building trust cannot be transactional. It's built on ordinary, consistent ways coming together. I think of women like Dr. Dorothy Irene Height, who's president of the NCNW, the National Council of Negro Women, who showed up week after week and Wednesdays in Mississippi. She and the women didn't show up for a photo op or for applause, but they showed up because they believed that if you're going to stand together in public, you got to know each other in private. So for them, trust didn't just occur in a vacuum, and it grew at the welcome table every Wednesday. And I think that that's what we have to find, opportunities for us to get together again, to spread the word, and to use our individual and our collective platforms through that echo chamber. Because if you're a pastor, a rabbi, a professor, a board chair, an elected official, a student, or a nonprofit leader, or even in your own individual capacity, it is extremely important that you share with everyone that this project about coming together and redigging old wells to come back together, that we have a courageous conversation, that we listen to each other and listen with intentionality, and then invite others to watch it with us. I have invited my family and friends in my sphere of influence, in my network, to join me tonight and watch the first episode, and then to get in the chat and let's talk about what we see. And I invite others to do the same, to host a watch gathering at a Sunday church event, a synagogue, your college campus center, a community foundation, your fraternity or sorority meeting, or even just sit down to have these real, honest conversations, not a debate, not a shouting match. These are real life issues, just an honest and appreciative inquiry dialogue where everyone has the opportunity to share and to say what they learned, what assumptions were made, and what still remains unclear. And third and final, I think what we have to do is remain vigilant in our communities if we really want to turn our learnings into action so that we can repair the breach and heal the misinformation and dis-ease in our community. So if I could have a call to action tonight in Great Baptist Forum, I would say this, that courage must not skip this generation, and that each of us, everyone in the sound of my voice, has a responsibility to tell someone about this very important project, but also to tell our own individual cultural stories fully and faithfully as we bring people to the table for real conversation. And we also have to stay committed to the healing and the restoration process that must take form, must take shape in our shared history to achieve our common destiny. And if we miss it, I think we've got to understand that relationships are primary. All else is derivative. All else. Our strategies, our policies, our partnerships, but most importantly, our progress. We've got to do it together.
Reverend Brock, taking us to church, I so appreciate that response. And you mentioned the importance of courage. You mentioned moral courage earlier. And then you also mentioned that this is a shared courage that both the Black and Jewish communities have demonstrated for years and years and years together and, within our, separate journeys as well. So that brings me to Rabbi Saperstein. Black and Jewish communities have long drawn from rich moral and prophetic traditions that emphasize justice as well as human dignity. From your perspective, what spiritual or ethical teachings best illuminate why these two communities found such deep common cause throughout American history?
Well, the series begins with a picture of the Passover Seder and the whole story of the movement from enslavement to freedom. And on that way, discovering the connection with the divine and with God and the commandments that God has entrusted to us to make real the world of justice and peace. Those are central to the imagery of what we've had. So many of the great civil rights figures that we think of, Dr. King and obviously Dr. King, but so many others who are ministers. When they spoke in their churches, they used Christological language and references to the New Testament. When they spoke to the public, they drew over and over again from the Hebrew scriptures. Here, the words of Leviticus 19, that we have to create courts of justice, remove the stumbling block before the blind. We have to feed the hungry here, that mandate not to stand idly by the blood of our neighbor. And Isaiah's call, that ritual is not enough, but we're mandated by God to deal our bread to the hungry, to tear apart the chains of the oppressed, to bring the homeless to shelter. All of these things mobilized and became a kind of blueprint for the kind of country of justice and peace that we really wanted to create here in America as well. So this was a powerful image that linked us together. And in our suffering, we turn to those verses as a source of strength. Each of us over the centuries repeatedly going back to those images and the belief that freedom could be our destiny. And that ennobled us and give us a sense of purpose and meaning and direction to help create that, make real the dream of justice and peace for ourselves and for all humankind. At the local level, churches and some of the Black mosques and synagogues across the country have, during the times of ups and downs in our broader relationship, have continued their dialogues, continued their joint celebrations of Martin Luther King's birthday, continued their pulpit exchanges, and work cooperatively on the problems in their community because they believed that they were carrying out those values that I talked about in real life. It mobilized the leaders, it mobilized the lawyers, it mobilized the activists, and it mobilizes all of us today as well.
Rabbi Saperstein, very, very helpful response. What I'm pulling from that is the importance of turning to each other across both you and Reverend Brock's messages of moral conviction and courage, as well as turning to each other, building that muscle, communing, as well as having conversations that are difficult, necessary, but ultimately get us to a place where we can create a collaborative impact in the world.
Indeed, Reverend Brock is a great example of that, her entire career. So Reverend Brock, thank you for all you've done.
Thank you, Rabbi, my dear friend.
That's incredible. Thank you both for sharing time with me today and for the fantastic conversation. You got to love when art can inspire conversations and opportunities to break bread in this way. So we are so excited for the next conversation between our CEO, Joshua Dubois, as well as Professor Gates. But first, let's take a moment to get another look at what you can expect from this amazing docuseries.
The civil rights movement healed the Jews in very profound ways after Nazi Germany.
During World War II, my dad served in the European theater. And my dad took us to Ravensbrück, a concentration camp, so that we would understand and we would know what Jewish people had gone through.
Donzale Abernathy and Avi Dressner are the children of civil rights activists Reverend Ralph Abernathy and Rabbi Israel Dressner.
Your dad and Dr. King were the generals. My dad was like a lieutenant. On my tie, I've got written Tikkun Olam, which means repairing the world. And that is part and parcel specifically of Reform Judaism. My dad was a Reform rabbi, and the Reform movement really emphasizes that social justice message. One of the big reasons that my dad and so many of the rabbis got involved was because of the Holocaust. My dad said to Dr. King, Jews were slaves 17 years ago in the death camps and concentration camps of Europe. So this is not ancient history for us. This is something that happened 17 years ago. And my dad said that really made an impression on Dr. King.
Wow. What a remarkable series. I know we are all looking forward to watching it unfold. Thank you so much, Kelsey, and good evening, everyone. Friends, tonight we welcome a man who listens for history the way some folks listen for music. Dr. Henry Louis Gates Jr. has spent a lifetime bringing forward the stories that history too often leaves at the margins. The stories of struggle and survival, of creativity and connection, of people whose lives shaped America. His work reminds us that the past is not distant, y'all. It is present. It is here with us now. It's persistent. As the force behind Black and Jewish America and interwoven history, he invites us to see a shared story and to consider what that story asks of us now. Please join me in welcoming a singular voice in American life, Dr. Henry Louis Gates Jr. Dr. Gates, it's good to be with you.
Thank you so much, dear brother, for your kind words. I was deeply moved. I could have listened to the rabbi and the reverend for the next hour. It was like going to the church and temple one day apart. It was really great. People ask me, so why in the world did you make this series? There's so many Black History series that you could make. And some people ask me if I was crazy to, to tackle such a vexed subject. The tipping point for me was Charlottesville in 2017. And when I was watching on TV and I finally understood that those crazy guys were chanting, Jews will not replace us. Jews will not replace, I couldn't quite make it out. And then looking at the Confederate flags behind them, and that was just 2 years after the massacre of 9 Black worshipers at Mother Emanuel Church in Charleston, I knew, ladies and gentlemen, that something profound had been broken, that Black and Jewish Americans were under attack, and we needed each other to confront this attack. And then came the Tree of Life murders in Pittsburgh a year later, the worst such attack in the United States history. In my lecture course at Harvard, I tell my students that there are 2 streams constantly running beneath the floorboards of Western culture. One is anti-Semitism, our civilization's oldest hatred, and the other is anti-Black racism. And whenever fascists go searching for a scapegoat, all they have to do is lift up those floorboards and they reach down and they find one of us and they make us the scapegoat. The historical entanglement between these two forms of hatred runs deeper than most Americans realize. In the 1930s, the Nazis used the Jim Crow playbook for creating their anti-Jewish legal regime. In fact, and this was a shock to me when I found this out when we were making the series, the word racism that we commonly associate with anti-Black hatred today only began to apply to Black people in the 1940s. Frederick Douglass never used the word once, and neither did the great W.E.B. Du Bois. The word originally defaulted to anti-Jewish animus, the racial ideologies of the Nazis. And it was with the rise of the post-war civil rights movement that the default shifted. Americans began to see that Jim Crow, that a people could be marked by an inherited stigma, was cut from the same cloth as the murderous ideology that had just devastated Europe. That history is prologue to our present crisis. According to the FBI, reported hate crime incidents roughly doubled between 2015 and 2024. Anti-Black hate crime incidents increased by about 81%. Reported anti-Jewish hate crime incidents more than tripled. And in 2024, roughly half of race-based hate crime offenses were directed against Black people, and 2/3 of religion-based hate crime offenses targeted Jewish people. As Al Sharpton says in the film, and as Frantz Fanon said famously in 1952, the anti-Semite is inevitably a Negrophobe. As Al said, people who hate Jews hate Black people. People who hate Black people hate Jews. The same hands that desecrate synagogues, ladies and gentlemen, burn crosses. Now, a horrifying reminder of this came on the morning of January 10th, when an arson fire badly damaged Beth Israel Synagogue in Jackson, Mississippi last year. Last month. That very synagogue was bombed by local Ku Klux Klan members back in 1967 because its rabbi and lay leadership supported the civil rights movement. Hatred has a long memory, and the same communities can find themselves targeted across generations. The recent string of deadly anti-Semitic attacks compounds this grief. In May 2025, 2 employees of the Israeli embassy in Washington were fatally shot outside the Capitol Jewish Museum as they left a Jewish community event. And in December 2025, 2 gunmen opened fire on the Hanukkah celebration at Bondi Beach in Sydney, Australia, killing 15 people and injuring about 40 others. Those attacks remind us that hatred respects no borders, and that the threat to Jewish life, like the threat to Black life, is acute and it's global. Yet even as we face these dangers, our two communities possess resources for resistance that run centuries deep. We share more than our wounds. Our cultures hold common values. The Jewish tradition, as the rabbi said, of tikkun olam, healing the world and defending the stranger, finds natural resonance in Black American traditions of uplift and collective struggle. And let's think about the Bible. Enslaved Africans reinvented themselves symbolically as a people in this country, finding hope in the depths of despair by retelling stories from the Hebrew Bible. Moses leading enslaved Jews out of Pharaoh's Egypt to the Promised Land, crossing the River Jordan to find freedom in the north. River Jordan is deep and wide, milk and honey on the other side. Daniel in the lion's den, Jonah in the belly of the whale, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in the fiery furnace. Those stories from the Hebrew Bible became spirituals. Ezekiel on the wheel, Deep River, Go Down Moses. And Barack Obama drew on this great tradition when he spoke of the Moses generation giving way to the Joshua generation. The Hebrew Bible, in other words, ladies and gentlemen, became a kind of mirror for the Black experience. The Black experience under slavery and the Black experience under Jim Crow, binding Black people and Jews together through worship, inspiration, and belief in ultimate deliverance under a God who stands for justice. Scripture gave our two groups a common cultural language that has connected our two peoples for generations. Now, this intertwined fate was on display in an ironic way at the 1936 Berlin Olympics, often called the Hitler Olympics, in a moment that's largely been forgotten. We all know that Jesse Owens won 4 gold medals, but he was only meant to win 3. How did he win that 4th one? Well, in the 4x100 meter relay, 2 Jewish runners who were scheduled to run, Marty Glickman and Sam Stoller, were forced to sit out the race because it would offend Adolf Hitler. They were replaced by Owens and another Black man named Ralph Metcalf. In that terrible calculus, being Black was more acceptable to Adolf Hitler than being Jewish. Think about that. The Nazis could stomach watching a Black man win. They couldn't bear to see a Jew triumph. When persecuted groups are played off against one another, ladies and gentlemen, no one escapes the logic that dehumanizes them all. In buoying this alliance, we need to begin with a clear-eyed premise. Neither community speaks with a single voice. Each contains a wide range of convictions, anxieties, loyalties, and values. Any durable partnership has to make room for internal plurality, internal disagreement. Coalitions fail when they demand unanimity, when they turn disagreement into disqualification. What sustains a shared project is the harder work of staying in relationship across difference, arguing without rupture, and protecting common interests, even amid unresolved tensions. We often talk about community as if it's a mood, but community is a practice. It means renouncing the cheap satisfactions of the applause of your own side, the thrill of a clean enemy, the ease of a story with only heroes and villains. The Black Jewish story, by contrast, is a long, imperfect, stubborn argument that dignity is not a scarce resource. Successful coalitions cannot have a litmus test. Partners have to agree to disagree, just like a marriage, but work together to find common ground, protecting their common interests. What we've learned in making this series is that both of our communities contain multitudes of perspectives. And if you don't believe me, just go down on Saturday to a Black barbershop or a Black beauty parlor. Rather than speaking for anyone, we made this series to try to foster dialogue and create space for people to share their own experiences and views about partnership, solidarity, and where we as two groups go from here. A relationship like this is not sustained by sepia photographs from the good old days. It's sustained by covenantal habits, showing up, listening past insult, telling the truth in a way that leaves the door open, defending someone else's rights even when you don't need the defense yourself. Those habits aren't glamorous. They don't go viral, but they're how the core of a democracy stays sound. So I want to end with a simple claim. This relationship still matters, not as a symbol, but as a test. If our two peoples, each taught in its own language the arts of degradation and survival, cannot find a way to stand together imperfectly, argumentatively, but faithfully, then the people who thrive on division, the people who thrive on hate, will have taught the country exactly what they wanted it to learn. But if we can, we offer something rarer than harmony: solidarity. Solidarity that knows all the arguments for divisiveness and yet can see beyond them. Our future depends on a choice that sounds modest, but a choice that changes everything: to stand with each other instead of standing apart. That, ladies and gentlemen, is why we have made this film series.
Yeah.
And we need your help at this time of crisis in our country to spread the message to our two peoples. Thank you very much.
Amen to that, indeed, Professor Gates. And I love the line you said, we share more than our wounds. The series engages so many subjects, but let's talk for a quick sec, if you don't mind, about jazz. It seems to me that jazz was a sort of collision. You had Black brilliance and Jewish innovation, this kind of shared outsider status, and the result was somehow unmistakably American. How did that collaboration reshape our culture then? How does that spirit of improvisation show up now? From Count Basie and Benny Goodman, the clubs on Tin Pan Alley, and more. What was happening then, and how's that resonating today?
Well, it's very interesting. There were two migrations going on at the time the jazz was created in the teens and the 20s. We all know about the Great Migration, right? So between 1890 and 1930, 2 million Black people leave the South, move to the North and the West. But simultaneously, between 1881 and 1924, 2.1 million Jews migrate from Europe to the United States. And where do they meet? They meet in Harlem. They meet through culture. I think I've thought about this a lot. It's a great question. I think as outsiders, Blacks and Jews found refuge in common interests through the creative arts generally, and more particularly through music. And think about Jewish Broadway composers George Gershwin, Harold Arlen, Jerome Kern, Richard Rodgers. They wrote jazz and blues inflected songs like I Got Rhythm, Stormy Weather, All the Things You Are, My Funny Valentine, Porgy and Bess, I Fall in Love Too Easily. And those became known as jazz standards. And Benny Goodman was a pioneer in insisting that swing bands be integrated by being one of the first to hire Black musicians such as Teddy Wilson or Lionel Hampton and the great guitarist Charlie Christian. But complications also arose. Fletcher Henderson was composing arrangements for Benny Goodman, such as King Porter's song, Sometimes I'm Happy. And that launched Goodman into stardom and great financial success, while Henderson remained in the shadows, leading to the charge that Goodman had appropriated Black music. It was much easier for Jewish managers and agents and club owners to gain positions in the music business that enabled them to own good livelihoods, because racial discrimination delimited the access of Black people to those things. So this created a great deal of tension. There was a great deal of cooperation creatively and a great deal of tension between Blacks and Jews financially. But that's changed recently. I think because so many hip hop artists have become entrepreneurs. It's something Quincy Jones told me. He was a very good friend. I miss him. And Quincy was the first Black jazz musician, as I understand it, who owned his own work. And Quincy died a very, very wealthy man. And Quincy is a case study at the Harvard Business School, because so many of us just signed a contract because we were so desperately poor. And that's not happening in hip hop today like it did, and we see enormously successful hip hop artists like Dr. Dre and Jay-Z and Beyonce. So things have changed, but blacks and Jews are still cooperating and collaborating in the hip hop world, even as we speak, as you saw the Grammys on
Indeed.
Sunday.
Indeed. Listen, I know time is getting a little tight, and we want to make sure folks are buckled in for 8 p.m. I think there was a question that came in from the audience, or that was sent in. I want to toss it over to Nicholas, who can share more.
Yes, indeed. Thank you, Joshua, and thank you, Dr. Gates, for this conversation. We did have questions from the audience. Unfortunately, we will only be able to get to one tonight, and it's from Renee Moore from Cleveland, Ohio. And the question, Dr. Gates, is, were any of the Black organizations in the U.S. active in the opposition to fascism and/or anti-Semitism around World War II?
Oh my God, what a great question, Renee. The Chicago Defender launched the Double V campaign. And the Double V campaign was victory in Europe, victory abroad over the Nazis and the fascists, and victory at home over anti-Black racism. And so we were in the fight against fascism, against the defeat of Hitler, and fighting simultaneously racism here at home. And I think that when Israel was created, the Black community was overwhelmingly in support of the creation of Israel, precisely because of the Holocaust, and no one more vocal about it than the great W.E.B. Du Bois. So the Black-Jewish Alliance, in some ways, as one of the commentators said, really, it starts with the creation of the NAACP in 1909, with Jews being on the board of directors. The Roosevelt schools, 5,000 schools were created in the Deep South because of the largesse of Julius Roosevelt working with local Black communities. But it reached a real high point during World War II, when we realized that who was next? After Hitler killed all the Jews, what was he going to do? Have a party for us? Of course not. And that's why we need each other today. Those white nationalists at Charlottesville denounce the Jews. They hate us just as much. And they are on the horizon. What does ICE remind you of? Anybody who studied the history of Reconstruction, when I look at ICE, I think of the Ku Klux Klan, 1870, terrorizing Black men trying to vote in Mississippi and Alabama and Georgia and throughout the South. There's a reason that those masks have a history. There's a reason that the Black Caucus is fighting to get those masks taken off. And we must be acutely aware that our history, that history of racism and oppression against us, is not over. And that prejudice against the Jews is not over. And both of those heinous forces are coming together at our people today.
Indeed. Dr. Gates, thank you so much. Those masks indeed have a history, and we see that history unfolding before our very eyes today. Thank you for your scholarship, your courage for this series, and certainly for your generosity with the truth. You have helped us see our history more clearly, and in doing so, you're reminding us of what's possible if we face that history honestly. We are so grateful for you, and so encouraging of everyone to watch this remarkable series. Nicholas, I know we have some closing thoughts too. Professor Gates, before we wrap up, anything else you'd like to share with the audience?
No, just thank you. I'd like to thank all the panelists, and thank you for your kind words. Thank all of you for watching, and I hope you'll tune in at 9 o'clock and let us know what you think, because we need you. If we're going to win this fight against fascism here at home, against the rise of white nationalism, we need you, and we need to work together.
Indeed. Thank you so much, Professor Gates. Nicholas, over to you. We have some powerful voices to close us out.
Yes. Wow. What amazing. Thank you, Dr. Gates. And thank you, Joshua. And what amazing two conversations we've had tonight. A reminder that Black and Jewish America and Interwoven History premieres tonight at 9 p.m. Eastern. We hope that you'll tune in, watch it on your local PBS station, or find it on the PBS app. And as we all collectively learn as we watch the series, extend the conversation online and share your thoughts on social media. And please, as always, tell your friends, your family, and your colleagues about this important docuseries. And by the way, look out for an email from Values Partnerships for information on opportunities to engage in this dialogue. In addition, we'll share opportunities for your church, synagogue, or organization to potentially host a special screening of the docuseries. Now, we couldn't end the night without another special guest, and we have Rabbi Michelle Dardashti. Rabbi was raised on a brand of Judaism that is multicultural, meta-denominational, musical, and global. She became a rabbi to share the gifts that her parents' eclectic Judaism afforded her, among them passion and hope. She is the first non-Orthodox Iranian rabbi in the United States and currently the senior rabbi at Kane Street Synagogue in Brooklyn, New York. Please join me in welcoming Rabbi Dardashti for our closing prayer and reflection.
Thank you so much. It is a huge honor to be here. As you mentioned, from my father, a religiously observant Jew from Iran, I learned about the biblical Moses. From my mother, an American folk singer and teacher, I learned about Grandma Moses, the name by which Harriet Tubman was known by her people. I grew up learning about the long trek the Israelites made through the wilderness and the unjust journey of African Americans to and in this country. And I came to understand both implicitly and explicitly that knowing both of these stories and knowing how they are still alive today is essential to who I am as a Jew and as a human. And so I pray, and we pray together tonight for the strength of this docuseries to give us the wisdom to do the work we need to do together. May the one who blessed our ancestors, Abraham and Isaac, Ishmael and Sarah, Hagar, and all who wandered in search of freedom, bless us with the courage to untie the fetters of wickedness, of anti-Semitism and anti-Black racism together. May the one who blessed our ancestors, Moses and Grandma Moses, Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel, and the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., may the one who blessed them with faith to march toward promised lands they might only see from afar, bless us with the resilience to believe that even dreams long deferred can yet be realized, if not by us, then by our children. And as the political theorist Michael Walzer has written, wherever we are, it's probably Egypt, a place of narrowness and constriction. And the only way from here to the promised land is to join hands and march forward together. May we be granted the strength to do just that.
Thank you so much, Rabbi Dardashti. And people didn't get to see you. So while I'm closing, if you could turn your camera on, we'd love to get a visual of you. But thank you so much for that wonderful prayer and reflection. And thank you all who have stayed with us for this powerful, powerful conversation. Thank you to all of the participants and Dr. Gates for taking the time to be with us tonight. If you haven't already, be sure to share about tonight on your social media. And remember, tune in to the premiere of Black and Jewish America, an Interwoven History at 9 p.m. Eastern tonight. And it is a 4-part docuseries that you will enjoy. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful evening. Good night.